Mr. Speaker, I am pleased today to be tabling in this Honorable House the bill entitled Criminal Code Amendment Act 2022. This bill seeks to amend temporary or sunset clause provisions in the Criminal Code Amendment Act 2012, which inserted the criminal offense of instructing a person to participate in unlawful gang activity and instituted increased sentences for offenses where unlawful gang activity is a feature of the criminal activity into the Criminal Code 1907. In effect, this amendment bill will permanently codify sections 33A, 70JA, and 70JB of the Criminal Code. These now vital provisions have been kept in operation via ministerial notices extending their effect since July 2012. Mr. Speaker, members and the public at large are agonizingly aware of the unprecedented scourge of gang-related criminal activity which has come to light in Bermuda society. Looking back to when the Criminal Code Amendment Act 2012 first became law, Bermuda was gripped for the first time in its history with increases in violent crime demonstrating the hallmarks of criminal organization into groups we rarely call gangs. In 2012, politicians were caught on the back foot because society was slow to accept the new reality that gangs were present and operating in Bermuda. One former premier, quite infamously, referred to the young people getting ensnared in this type of criminal activity as only 4%. With that backdrop, Mr. Speaker, we come to this moment in time which regrettably requires us as legislators to continue the intractability of gang-related crime in Bermuda, despite sustained policing efforts and inventive government-wide policies to dissuade young people from joining unlawful gangs and participating in unlawful conduct. Mr. Speaker, it is proper for other honorable members of the government to elucidate this House with updates related to crime, policing, and social services, particularly as it relates to our youth. However, a blunt reality is that the criminal law must also play its part with effective offenses and dissuasive penalties. As the Attorney General and Minister responsible for justice, I inherited the responsibility to continue extending the gang-related sunset clause provisions of the Criminal Code Amendment Act 2012 with no end in sight. As members know, sunset clause provisions are those which set a fixed expiration date for a legislative provision within an enactment. Typically, sunset clause provisions are used when the underlying policy is sought to fix an interim problem or the enactment is expected to become unnecessary in the future. When the legislature passed the Criminal Code Amendment Act 2012, the country as a whole could neither accept nor pretend that society would be gripped in gang-related criminality such that there would be a continuing need for gang-specific criminal offenses and increased penalties. Mr. Speaker, ministerial notices extending the operation of the Criminal Code Amendment Act 2012 provisions have been issued repeatedly over the past 10 years. We have no responsible option that allows us to dispense with the attendant provisions addressing unlawful gang activity in the foreseeable future. With the support of the Director of Public Prosecutions and the Commissioner of Police, it is our collective view that the intent and utility of these provisions remain crucial to the overall efforts to mitigate against the proliferation of criminal gang activity. Thus, after 10 years, the use of sunset provisions to effect policy and legal objectives in question is beyond the life expectancy of policymakers and legislatures had for the 2012 Act. With that, Mr. Speaker and members, this amendment bill simply seeks to permanently include sections 33A, 70JA, and 70B into the Criminal Code 1907, thereby no longer requiring a sunset clause provision or extension notices to be issued by the minister responsible for justice. I look forward to providing further details of the provisions as the bill advances through the legislative process. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.